I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. He's the President and CEO of the National Center for Policy Analysis. He took the post because he believes it will be policy, not politics, that secures a sound economic future for Americans, with growth, opportunity, and return the promise of the American dream for this generation and those to come. He's the third of 4 generations of military servicemen in his family. West was commissioned through ROTC at the University of Tennessee as a second lieutenant in July of 1982. He culminated his career with an assignment as a battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion, 20th Field Artillery, 4th Infantry Division. He assumed command of this unit on June 6, 2002. He deployed with his unit during the Iraq War in 2003 and continued to command his battalion until his retirement from the Army in 2004, after 22 years of honorable service. His awards, a lot of awards, Bronze Star, Military Service Medal, but as a pilot, I find these most interesting because I never thought that jumping out of a perfectly good airplane was a smart idea. He has the Master Parachutist badge, the Air Assault badge, the Navy Marine Corps Parachutist insignia, the Italian Parachutist wing, and the German Proficiency badge. So he obviously likes to jump out of airplanes. After retirement from the Army in 2004, Alan taught high school for a year before volunteering and deploying to Afghanistan as a civilian military advisor to the Afghan Army, an assignment he finished in November 2007. In November of 2010, Alan was honored to continue his oath of service to his country when he was elected to the United States Congress, representing Florida's 22nd District until 2013. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and 2 master's degrees. My actual knowledge of Alan West started back in 2001 at the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force in Jacksonville, North Carolina. When I went on active duty in 2001, Alan was down the hall at the 2 MEF as the Army liaison for artillery in the 2nd MEF Future Ops. So, and I got to tell you, the Marines there, we all loved him. He was that kind of guy. I mean, and anybody who knows the Army and Marine Corps knows that that's not given lightly. When we think as much of an Army guy as we do of any other Marines, and there was no Marine there who wouldn't have been proud to go into combat with Alan West, and I say that with all my heart. And so please welcome Alan West.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The real reason Frank didn't tell you why I got assigned down to Camp Lejeune from Fort Bragg, being an artillery guy, you know, we're pretty good with math and physics. They need some additional math instructors down there for the Marines. So they asked me to come down there and help them out with basic adding and subtraction. But it was a great assignment, one of the best assignments that I had in my career. And it's good to be back in North Carolina. I spent 5 years of my military career right here. As a matter of fact, the first time I landed at Raleigh-Durham International Airport was in 1996, coming from the Army Staff College to look for housing. And I will tell you that today I am honored to have a man who truly enables me to stand here today. He was my brigade commander at 18th Field Artillery at Fort Bragg. He selected me to be his operations officer. And if you understand something about the Army, you don't come out of the Staff College and immediately go to be the operations officer for the largest field artillery unit in the United States Army, 2,200 soldiers. That man here with me today is Colonel Denny R. Lewis, and I want to thank you, Colonel Lewis, for everything you did to enable me to be the soldier that I am. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I was told that the theme of this event, this conference, is Freedom's Battleground. And so I want to talk to you about Freedom's Battleground. I want to put it in the perspective of where we are today in the United States of America, not just domestically, but globally as well. I'm sure many of you all watched the debate last night, or if you want to call it a spectacle more than that. But it reminded me of a vignette from a movie. How many people here saw the movie or remember the movie Braveheart? I know all you women did because the men were wearing kilts and y'all thought that was, so all the women should raise their hand. But there was an interesting part of that movie After William Wallace and the Scots had defeated the army from England at a place called Stirling, they rewarded them. They brought them into this great hall, and they were hanging all kind of trinkets and decorations, and they knighted Sir William. And then as soon as they had finished with the award ceremony, they started to fight amongst themselves. They started to hold up pieces of paper talking about that they were the rightful person to be entitled to the King of Scotland. And no, your clan is nothing but a bunch of thieves. No, my clan is better than your clan. And then someone noticed that Sir William was walking out of the hall. And they all stopped arguing. They looked up and they said, "Sir William, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to fight the English. You can stay here and argue over the scraps of the table that you have been receiving from them. But I'm going to focus on who the real enemy is. And if we are to be successful in the United States of America, it's time that we focus on who the real enemy is. It's time that we understand who we are as constitutional conservatives and identify who the progressive socialists are in this great nation." You know, there's another little conservative thing not too far up I-95. Everyone's dressing pretty and sitting around and, you know, having all these speeches. And everyone talks about principles. We talk about fiscal responsibility, limited government, individual sovereignty, free market economy, strong national defense. But if you have principles and you are not willing to go onto the battlefield and fight for those principles, basically what is happening is that you have an M4 that you're not cleaning, and you don't even have bullets for it. Matter of fact, most times when you look at what we've been doing, the omnibus spending bill and this budget deal and all these things, what we're putting in our M4 is blanks. We're not hitting the target. When you think about the other side and what they stand for wealth redistribution. They stand for nationalizing our production. Lieutenant Governor, you hit it right. They don't believe that we can do anything for ourselves. They believe that everything about our production, everything about our lives has to come from Washington, D.C. The fact that in 2012 in Roanoke, Virginia, when the President of the United States running for re-election can stand up and say, if you own a business, you didn't build that, that's an automatic disqualification to be the leader of this great nation. See, they believe in creating and expanding a welfare nanny state. You see it here in Raleigh-Durham. I see it when I go back to my old inner city neighborhood in Atlanta. You know what is happening. More people on food stamps, more people on poverty, more people that are dependent upon them. They're not harvesting cotton anymore. They're harvesting votes. That's the most important thing. And then they don't believe in the fact that you can go out with your own determination, can do things for yourself. They believe in the social utopianism. They don't believe that you can go out and earn any way, shape, form, or anything in your life. That's why they're the participation trophy party. And we need to be able to explain that. They think that they can give you the little plastic piece of crap that you can put up on your mantle. But in the lifespan, it will mean nothing. But in the immediate, it makes you feel good, but mostly it makes them feel good, because that's what social egalitarian is all about. That's why today, Ash Carter is talking about all the combat positions in the United States military are open. Why? Because it makes them feel good to say that they're giving something to somebody else. But what does that mean on the real battlefield? And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't understand that the other side is the party of secular humanism, because it was right here in the state of North Carolina in 2012 at the Democrat National Convention when they had to vote to put God back into their platform. And they even booed to put God back in their platform. And where was our voices? Where were we standing up? Where were we shooting back to stand up and say, hey, time out? Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed with certain unalienable rights. And Thomas Jefferson made it really clear that your life, the first right that the individual have, your liberty and your pursuit of happiness, not someone trying to guarantee you happiness, it doesn't come from man. It doesn't come from government. It comes from your Creator. It comes from your Creator God. And if we are to understand freedom's battleground, we must understand that if you remove God from the marketplace, if you remove God from the public sphere, if you remove God from the United States of America, if you take away our Judeo-Christian faith heritage, then who is the grantor and also the taker of your rights? Because Thomas Jefferson said a government that is big enough to give you everything that you want is also big enough to take it all away. And where are our voices to stand up and say that we were founded on these principles? This does not mean that we don't respect or regard other faith beliefs, but you're not going to take away the essence of who we are. You're not going to take away the fact that those 56 men that signed the Declaration of Independence, they didn't ask for man's providence as they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They asked for divine providence. That's a big difference about this great country that we call America. But if we allow people to continue on with this stuff about separation of church and state, then the next thing you know, we won't be able to have the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof. We may have freedom of worship, which they will tell us you can only do it here or there, but you cannot bring that out into a public sphere. Now is the time to get on freedom's battleground, because we can't have a Supreme Court that all of a sudden decides that they can usurp the rights of the state, and they can create a right for a special group, and they can demand that the states have to follow this with same-sex marriage. I support civil unions. I got no problem with that, but I do not support 5 people in the United States of America all of a sudden redefining what marriage is, redefining what a family is. That is not how we win on freedom's battleground. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I want you to understand. That it is time that we start to act like those men and women that are right down the road at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Yeah, I know, you're not really smart to jump out of an airplane, okay? I couldn't fly an airplane, so I got in the other line. All I had to do was understand the red meant you stay in the airplane, green meant that you could jump out. That was pretty simple. But you think about the history of the paratrooper. You think about what paratroopers do. You think about the motto that Colonel Lewis gave to us in the 18th Field Artillery Brigade Airborne. He said, we will be tough, we will be proud, we will be disciplined. That's what we need in constitutional conservatism. Because paratroopers train to do one single thing. They train to jump in behind the enemy lines. They train to jump in and take the fight to the enemy. They train to go in and disrupt the enemy. And if we are to be successful on freedom's battleground, then this great message of constitutional conservatism, this incredible weapon that we have, we need to load it up with real bullets. And we need to go into those neighborhoods and communities where they're not hearing this message, where they're hearing the message of dependency, where they're not hearing the message of truly, yes, you can. Because when the other side says, yes, you can, really, you know what they're telling you? No, you can't. We can only do it for you. And we need to be able to delineate that difference. We need to be able to go into communities, such as my black community, and tell them why families have been destroyed. Because some 50 years ago, in 1965, with the Great Society programs of Lyndon Baines Johnson, when all of a sudden he came up with this brainiac idea that if a woman has a child out of wedlock, as long as she continues to not have a man in the home, if she continues to have a child out of wedlock, the government will give her a check. 50 years ago, the 2-parent household, Lieutenant Governor, in the black community was at 77%. The 2-parent household in the black community today is at 24%. You want to talk about why crime is rampant? You want to talk about drugs being rampant? You want to talk about what happens when you take the black father out of the home and you replace it with the government father? That's what has happened. Because we're not standing up, we're not being paratroopers, we're not being tough, we're not being proud, we're not being disciplined, we're not going in behind the enemy lines. The Lieutenant Governor was absolutely right. We should be championing school choice, charter schools, school vouchers, education savings accounts, the policy that we're working on at the NCPA. Why? Because choice means more than killing a baby. It means educating that child. And that is what a parent should have the right to do. And we should not allow our inner cities, our urban areas to fall asunder to these failing government public school systems. That's something that we should be winning. That's an issue that is on our side. When you go into these communities, you don't see the small business development and entrepreneurship that I saw growing up as a kid walking down Auburn Avenue. My elementary school was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church at the intersection of Boulevard and Auburn Avenue. Every single day of my life, I walked down past that church and I saw the Southern Christian Leadership Council. I saw doctors' offices. I saw lawyers' offices. I saw small business. I saw Bronner Brothers. If y'all folks remember, those were the guys that did all the hair care products. A couple of years ago, I went back on Auburn Avenue. The only thing I saw open was a liquor store. You know, that young man sitting over there, Jimmy Kemp, his dad had an incredible policy initiative, along with Art Laffer, Ronald Reagan's economic advisor, called Urban Economic Empowerment Zones. Why is it that we as constitutional conservatives have not picked up that policy, Jimmy, and taken it into the inner city and said, we're the people that want to get you off the 21st century economic plantation where you are being enslaved. We're the people that want to empower you to be able to, with your own investment, with your own ingenuity, with your own innovation, to start a business. You know, I just recently moved to Dallas last year. And at the corner of Forest Lane and Ardelia, there's a low-income grocery store, Aldi's grocery store. Every single Saturday and Sunday, there are a couple of young black men that pull up there with a truck, 55-gallon drum. They open that sucker up, they put the grill out, and guess what they start doing? They start selling barbecue. Wouldn't it be great if we were the people that went out on freedom's battleground and talked about how we take them, Governor, out of the parking lot of Aldi's and put them in that closed storefront so that they can have pride in the product that they're doing, so they can become the next generation of American entrepreneur. But see, we get too comfortable, and we don't want to jump in behind enemy lines because it's tough. They may not like us, so what? Because the other side is always there, talking about nationalizing production and wealth redistribution, how they're going to take it from one and give it to them and take away the will, determination, and pride, the discipline, the toughness. If you're serious about freedom's battleground, you got to do what we say in the paratroopers. You got to ruck up. And you got to get out there and you got to fight for this. But it's not just here domestically, ladies and gentlemen. And think about North Carolina, a great state, with Fort Bragg, with Camp Lejeune, Seymour Johnson, great fighting forces. It should have turned your stomach to see 10 of our sailors on their knees at gunpoint from the Iranians. Okay? It should turn your stomach to know that an Army Special Forces Green Beret Sergeant First Class named Charles Martland is fighting to stay in the Army because he stood up and he punched out an Afghan police officer that he found out was raping a 12-year-old boy. What kind of military that we have when we want to put out people like that? When we have our sailors on their knees, what kind of military that we have when we are allowing these incredible Islamic jihadists to behead Americans, to kill us even in our own country? And we will not stand up to them. That's not tough. That's not proud. That's not discipline. That's not taking freedom's battleground. We have to be those champions as constitutional conservatives. You know, I met a young man. I don't know if he's still out there. Where's Jack? Jack, you here? Come up here, Jack. Because I want you to understand what freedom's battleground is all about. Freedom's battleground is to make sure that Jack grows up in the greatest nation that the world has ever known. Freedom's battleground means that the DNA that we have over 239 years that says we pass on something better to subsequent generations than what was left to us. That's what we owe Jack. It's not about coming here and sitting at a luncheon and eating this nice chow. That's pretty good ravioli. I'll give it to him. But it's about leaving these doors. And remember the Jacks and the Janes that you have in your lives, your children and your grandchildren. What will your legacy be? Because let me tell you about what happens when liberty meets tyranny, Jack. In 490 BC, when 300 brave Greeks stood tough, stood proud, stood disciplined, And when they were asked by tyranny to lay down their weapons, they replied with two very short words. And those two very short words I share with you. Molon lave. Those two little short words mean come and take it. Because they understood that there were jacks back in Sparta. That they were not going to sacrifice their freedoms and liberties for. That they would stand in that small place at Thermopylae on freedom's battleground for the Jacks and the Janes that were back in Sparta. Now is the time for you to stand up on freedom's battleground. Stand up and say, Molon lave, to the progressive socialists that want to take away this great nation. And remember that even when they knew they were going to be betrayed, Jack, even when another Greek decided that he would surrender and be subservient, they didn't leave Thermopylae. Leonidas chose one Spartan, and he gave him these words that are there on that monument there today. Go tell the Spartans and strangers passing by that here on freedom's battleground, here, obedient to their laws, we lie. Lieutenant General Rick Lynch was my assistant division commander when I was a battalion commander at Fort Hood. And he has a great quote. He said, how will you live your dash? And when you think about on your tombstone, there's your start date and there's your end date, Jack. In between is a dash. What will your dash say about you and what you did on freedom's battleground? Will the young Jacks walk by and say, you held up your commitment to me in your dash? Or will Jack unfortunately have to say, they let me down? I say that now is our time, that our monument will be erected, that Jack will one day know, just as we know about the great founding fathers, that these men and women that you see here before you today, they stood for your freedom, and they won on freedom's battleground. God bless you all, and thank you. Thank you.